All right, thanks everybody for coming. I am Dagrun daughter. I live in Ontario. I am, in my mundane world, a licensed falconer. I've been a falconer for about 6 years, and I've been in the SCA about 5, so the one happened before the other. I am here with Simon, who's, hi, decided he really doesn't want to be on screen, but he'll stay as long as he stays. He's gonna go back. Oh, then, there we go. And Simon is a hybrid falcon. He is what's referred to as a germato, meaning he's half gerfalcon, half aplomado falcon. The aplomado falcon is a Peruvian subspecies of North American, basically from Texas all the way down to South America. Captive bred. We've been hunting together about 3 years. Mostly he goes after feral pigeons. I like hunting invasive species, but that's a little bit about my background. And what we're going to talk about today is medieval falconry. If anybody has questions about modern falconry, I can take them at the end of the class. Mostly this is a little bit of history, a little bit of where you would work it into your persona, because falconry was a pretty pervasive thing from, not so much Roman, but you hit about 900 AD up until the advent of firearms, and everybody participated in some form of falconry, particularly in Western Europe, Japan, China. If you go down into the Middle East, it's mostly men, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And then what we're going to do is we'll talk about the terms and how you would have acquired your falcon, how you would have trained your falcon, much of which are still applicable today. There's a few things that aren't, and we'll get into what isn't. Mostly, my material comes from The Art of Falconry, which was written by, let me get the correct year, because I am terrible with dates. Frederick II, Holy Roman Emperor, was between 1194 and 1250 was his lifetime, and he wrote this book. It is a giant volume. If you are interested in the history of falconry, I do recommend picking up a copy. I found mine used. It's huge. Weighs a lot. I got it as a used book from a library. That's 2 volumes. And it is well worth it. There's a saying that humans left the cave on the back of a horse with a hawk on the fist. And that may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but falconry has been around. Experts said that anywhere between 6,000 and 4,000 BC. There are records in Iran that talk about a king hunting with a bird of prey between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago. So whenever it began, it was well established in Asia and the Middle East by about 2000 BC. And when we use the term falconry, we are using the term hunting of other animals with the use of falcons. In Egypt, they worshiped them, they used them as sacrifices. There may have been a little bit of hunting, but it wasn't necessarily as pervasive of sport. Julius Caesar used falcons to take down messenger pigeons, not necessarily hunting, but certainly by that time, they knew about falconry. At the end of the class, there'll be some handouts that DISA will give you access to. There's a timeline, there's some falconry terms, there's some examples of artwork and some other things. that you can look over at your leisure. Basically, falconry around 2000 BC, again, was when it was pretty firmly established. It worked its way westward and northward through Greece and Italy and then the rest of Europe. And again, that'll be in the handout if you're really interested in the details and where it showed up and with whom. But chances are your persona or someone in your family was a falconer. You know, while it probably started as a way to put food on the table, it became a pastime and a fad. While in most of the world it was a sport of the gentry, by around 1100, 1200 in Europe, everyone did it. You think of today, everybody walking down the street with a cell phone and, you know, they're focused. Pretty much then, you know, I don't have a glove on, but you would see somebody walking around with one of these. He's just crabby today. There are sources that say Roman Emperor Vespasian, which is AD 9 to 79. Again, the references of Julius Caesar. True falconry shows up in the writings of Julius Firmicus Maternus, who was a Sicilian lawyer and an astrologer. And in one of his books from around 330, that's AD, he states that persons born when Venus is in Aquarius, they will be addicted to hunting and hawking, which I just find that super cool and kind of amusing. It's possible that if you were a Roman, you know, young men participated in Rome. There's writings where they say young men are addicted to fine clothes, fine dogs, and fine hawks. I cannot find evidence of women participating. Everything I see, it's very much a young men's sport. However, your husband, your father, your brother, and I can't imagine there wasn't a Roman woman that broke tradition. Yeah, with the origin in the Middle East, pretty much in period, everybody would know about the sport. I also can't find examples of women hunting with falcons. But the Bedouin, kind of a cool thing they did. They hunted with dogs, which were salukis. Animals killed by the falcons were considered halal, meaning they could eat it. And what they would do is they would hunt gazelles. And how they trained them is they took a dried out gazelle skin and tucked meat in the eye holes. And they would drag it, and the birds would learn that the food was in the eyes, and thus slowing down the gazelle where the saluki could continue its pursuit. Japan, it was called takagari in Japan, falconry. Began around the 4th century. It came from China. According to a passage in the Nihon Shoki, around 720, falconry was introduced by the noble Saki no Kimi in 359 during the reign of Emperor Nintoku. It started out as a sport of nobles, pretty much stayed there until really modern times. During the time of the samurai really picked it up and enjoyed it. I do have record of Sake no Kimi's daughter named Tochiku. She was a noted falconer, and it is recorded that she was a falconer. And again, that's around 720. So certainly if your persona is a lady and Japanese, there's precedent for that. As for Western Europe, which again is where most of this is going to focus, but again, I can answer questions. There's evidence of falconry from the various peoples who overran and invaded and lived in Western Europe Um, and there are laws that go back to the 6th century, sumptuary laws, you know, who can have what falcon, trading. There's talks of, or there's record of, you know, certain diplomats going to other certain diplomats, each of them with a falcon on their shoulder. There was a viable gerfalcon trade in Scandinavia from about 900 AD. And we'll get into what a gerfalcon was and the value of a gerfalcon just a tiny bit later. The stuff that's the bells and jesses and other things that you find on the falcon is called falconry furniture. Furniture has been found in graves of both men and women. So certainly something that both men and women did. By the 11th century, it was a well-established sport among the gentry, but everyone did it. It wasn't, you know, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone. There were churches in the front of the altars at the church where you could leave your bird while you were attending mass. And again, not something that you would use to put food on the table. You would certainly hunt and you would certainly catch things. But if you were a gentleman, think of it as a 3-martini lunch. This was when you were able to speak with other men and you could, you know, have some political influence or other influence. You might arrange a marriage or a property transfer or just to up your status. That would certainly be something that would have happened while hunting. You would give gifts of falcons if you had that kind of means. If you were a lady, it was kind of a break from the confines of the home. It was also a time where you wouldn't necessarily have a lot of supervision, and women were well supervised and restrained. And you might only have the master falconer or the cadger, that was the man that carried the hawk for you until you were hunting. And that would be it. You would have a lot of freedom. You might be able to meet up with a lover. There's a lot of artwork of women kind of off in the woods with the man and a hawk right there. So it was time to spend with your girlfriends. It also put you on an equal level with men. You know, it doesn't matter the size of the hawk, it's how good it hunts. And you know, a small merlin, more of a lady's bird, is certainly equally capable of hunting as any larger bird. And it's all about how you take care of it and how you train it. There's another saying is that you could tell a man's mettle by his hawk, his horse, and his hound. That's both the temperament, disposition, and training of the animals, but also the type of animal you were allowed to have. There were crimes for hawking above your station. If you look into the Book of St. Albans, that was written in 1486. It gives suggestions of what you might hunt with if based on your station in life. For the emperor, it was an eagle, a vulture, or a merlin. You can't hunt with a vulture. They're big and they're impressive, and that's probably why they said the king could carry, or the emperor could carry one. But you know, what does it hunt? It hunts dead things, and it's kind of useless, but it's impressive. You know, I guess kind of like a DeLorean was. They were impressive and big and didn't do much. So a king would have a gerfalcon, more likely a female gerfalcon. The females are larger than the males. They tend to be a little more aggressive. They tend to be, you know, bigger, better, faster. A prince, what they called a falcon gentil, probably a peregrine. Yeah, the peregrine falcon is probably the most widespread bird of prey the entire world. There's different subspecies on every continent but Antarctica. You know, when they said in the 70s, if those of you are old like me, you remember peregrine falcon, endangered, dying, America, 70s DDT. That was just in America. Peregrine falcons were in no danger of being eliminated off the face of the planet, just the American subspecies, which actually were reintroduced by falconers. Kind of an interesting, non-applicable story. Duke, they say the falcon of the loch. I've also seen this as falcon of the rock. Scotland was specifically known for really, really good peregrines. My guess is that's just a subspecies of peregrine. We don't know for sure. An earl, they say peregrine falcon. Again, my guess is they probably mean a male, since the prince would have a female. Baron, there's all kinds of translations. It says buzzard, it says bastard. There's speculation. The European buzzard is a relative of the red-tailed hawk here in America. The American red-tailed hawk is a great game bird. The buzzard is not. They're really lazy, and they don't, once they figure out that you'll feed them, they don't really hunt. So probably not a buzzard. My guess is that's a bastard falcon or a bastard hawk, meaning something that they don't know. Probably something you may have brought back from the Crusades, something you could have traded for, but just something, hey, I don't know what it is, it's a falcon. So a knight was a saker falcon, a squire a lanner falcon. If you read from the actual text, it says saker or sakerette, or lanner or lanneret. That's just gender. Female is lanner, male is lanneret, saker, sakerette. For a lady, a merlin, specifically the higher ranked lady, the more female the merlin. You would have a female merlin if you were a well-bred, well-born lady. A young man, a hobby falcon. A hobby falcon is a small falcon, about a little smaller than Simon, found in Europe. A yeoman, a goshawk. You do use hawks in falconry. The sport is falconry, but you do it with hawks. The goshawk is kind of your bird of all trades. By nature, falcons hunt feathered prey. Goshawks will kill anything they think they can kill. They're a hunting machine. They're really, really good at it and really aggressive. A priest, a female sparrowhawk. The holy water clerk, a musket, which is a male sparrowhawk. And you're a poor man, a kestrel. The European kestrel is slightly larger than the American kestrel. However, you know, you can catch songbirds with an American or a European kestrel, and that was valid food if that was your gig. And again, not necessarily putting food on the table, but if you're a poor guy, it doesn't hurt. Some of our basic terms in falconry, I'm getting into the male and female. The word falcon originally meant just the female. Like a mare is just a female horse. The falcon was a female raptor, specifically a peregrine. If you had a gerfalcon, female is the gerfalcon, the male is a jerkin. A sparrowhawk and musket, a merlin and a jack. The jack is the male. Simon, as I said, you would know the gerfalcon. The subspecies, the aplomado was known in Spain in late period. They referred to it as an alethe. And so they would have known it. These guys were brought in from the New World. They were fairly friendly in the terms of falcons. I mean, This isn't an affectionate pet. You know, he trusts me. We have a relationship, but, you know, he doesn't want snuggles, and they never really do. But they do have a slightly more friendly disposition than, say, like a gerfalcon or any of the larger guys. So you would have you as your persona would have some sort of idea about the sport of falconry, what it is, what you do. So what are the terms? We'll start with terms. If you see around Simon's ankles, those are anklets. What's attached to them is jesses. Originally, that would be a one-piece jess. We don't use that in modern times because it's a little bit dangerous if your bird gets loose. But jesses, they're attached to a leash. That's this, holds the bird down. I have a gauntlet, it's attached. He's more attached to my porch, but falconry gauntlet, tough leather. It's long because they will creep up your wrist. In the attachments, there are some pictures of, I think there's one of Henry VIII's hawking gloves. I don't believe it's actually the glove he used for handling the birds, just because it doesn't look like a falconry gauntlet to me. It's also for the right hand. Falconry gauntlet goes on your left hand. There was another one, James VI, I believe, in those examples, that absolutely is a falconry glove. It has that little tassel. It's a left-handed glove. It's really ornate.
Do you want me to show those?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, hang on just a second here. So somebody did ask, do you know where they can find a pattern for making long gloves?
You know, I have seen some. I can, if you private message me after this, I can look those up and send them to you. I'm happy to do that. That's, whoops, it goes away when somebody clicks pictures for me. But that first one is Henry VIII's, the little short thing. Oh, come on.
Hang on, let me mute myself. I just realized I'm still unmuted.
There we go. Okay, that's Henry VIII's. You'll see it's a right-handed glove. It's not super high. I suspect he used that when he was, while he was hawking. He probably had one that matched for the left. And then if you scroll down, that's King James hawking glove. If you look at those, that beautiful embroidery, there's a thread of silver, it's all ornate. And that's kind of what you did. When you went out hawking, you dressed up. You were there to see and be seen. It's a gorgeous piece, and I would actually love to make myself one like that. I cannot get a good solid answer what that little tassel-y thing is. They're on every single falconry glove, and I don't know a single modern falconer that knows what the heck to do with it. I suppose if you can use it to attract the bird's attention. If you look in this picture, you've got some assortment of hoods. Hoods are to keep the bird calm. Somewhere I have Simon's. He hates it. I don't put it on him. He's a calm bird to begin with. But, you know, I can put it on him if I'm trimming his beak or doing some sort of medical thing. The only difference between this and a hood from, you know, 1,000 years ago is the poles are neoprene rather than leather. So they, because you do all this with your mouth when you're tightening stuff, and leather just gets gnarly. That's a lure, the thing that kind of looks like 2 chicken legs with the weird skirt. You use that to attract the bird. You can put meat on that while you're training. You can use that if your bird is kind of flown off. You swing that, they know it. Operant conditioning works. There's a hawking bag. That's beautiful. I have a, this is a reproduction of a German hawking bag from 12th century, I believe. But really similar. and my thing went off again.
I switched to
Oh, okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, the German hawking bag, you know, there are designs of modern bags that are just like this. The stiff, because again, you're doing everything one-handed where you can reach in and you can, you know, you don't have to fumble for it, because while you're hawking, you do everything pretty much one-handed. You can stuff game in here. There's little pockets for, you know, extra furniture, and so forth. But yeah, if you want a pattern for gloves, I will look for it. PM me. I'll send you one. This is a kind of a nasty lure. It's one I use. You attach meat in there, you swing it. It looks similar enough to the other one. It's not as fancy, but it's well used. And they work then, they work today.
I was going to say that I find that so cool that it looks that the tools look so similar
Yes.
to, you know, to what they were back then.
To what they were. Belts. These are big. These are too big for Simon, but Simon has some on. I haven't taken his off. I probably should have at the end of the season, but I was hoping would be over with this COVID thing where I could do some more classes. Your bells are tuned differently to everybody else's bells. That way you know what your bird is in the field. If your bird takes its game in high grass, falconry isn't fetch. They don't bring it back to you. You have to go get it, and possibly even dispatch the prey. It's not a quick process all the time. In fact, most of the time it's not a quick process. And one, you don't want the game to suffer, and two, you don't want your bird to get hurt. When you hunt, the idea is to get things that are, you know, bigger. And you train these birds to hunt things they may or may not hunt naturally. They can kill them, but they're not going to take that chance. I can take small duck with Simon. I have not yet. I just haven't. I like pigeons. They're fairly safe, and I don't have to worry too much, and I like him. I don't want to lose my bird. But you can take duck, and a duck can do some injury to a small bird. So you want to get in there and you want to dispatch it. But if that bird is in the rushes or cattails or whatever, and you don't know where it is, that's what the bells are for. You know, in modern times we use telemetry, sort of. You don't do it while you're hunting if you can't find your bird. You know, while you're hunting, if he's gone, you use it. But you know, to retrieve game, you use bells. The things that attach the bells to the jesses are called bewits, little tiny pieces of leather. I use cable ties. It's just easier. But in period, you would use a little piece of leather called a bewit. The cadge is a perch that you use when you're carrying your bird out in the field. You'll find it in modern days. They'll call the cadge what they have in the back of the truck that you put the bird in. A creance. Creance is a line, an attached line that you use for training purposes, because before your bird is trained, you don't want to just let it go because it'll leave. So you work on it with this long line. And you'll hear terms like eyas. An eyas is a baby bird, little baby falcon, little baby eagle. They're still the fluffy, naked before they have feathers. Once they have feathers and you see them kind of sitting outside the nest, that's referred to as a brancher. Any bird in its first year is called a passage bird. And then after that, they're called a haggard bird or a hag. So you've now decided you're going to be a falconer and you want to acquire your bird. How do you do that? Well, if you read Frederick's book, he will tell you If you take an eyas from the nest, and he does use those terms, and those terms are used in modern falconry, he talks about how they're very dependent on people. They stand around with their mouths wide open and they scream, which is 100% true. An imprint baby is really, really hard to use in falconry. You can, you know, you can take a brancher and some of them will sort of imprint, but imprints are difficult to work with. And Frederick knew that, and it's still true. It takes a lot of work with an imprint. A haggard or an older bird, we don't, in modern falconry, don't take them if you're trapping a bird, because that's part of your breeding population, and you just don't do that. Plus they don't tame very well. What you want is you want a passage bird. Frequently these birds you would get during their migratory period in late fall. People then knew the migration routes. They knew where these birds were going, and they knew how to get them. So how would you get it? Couple methods: you could net them. That was certainly a very popular way of obtaining them. Today we don't net them because you can do damage to feathers. They were a little bit less concerned with conservation and preserving the birds than we are. But you could also, there's a record of using a dove. This is, I believe, Saudi Arabia. They would use a dove with camel hair nooses on it, which these days we use microfilament or thick fishing line. You tie down the pigeon, you toss it to where you know there are young falcons. Young falcons are not particularly experienced in hunting. They've had some experience, but usually they're pretty hungry, and so they'll go after it. The nooses will catch them. You run up, you free it, and Frederick talks about putting it in a sock, and that's kind of what you do. You restrain the bird. Now, what he suggests doing is a process called sealing. So you've caught your bird, whether if you've trapped it. You know, brancher, you don't so much need to. You just need to spend time with it or man it. If you've trapped a passage bird that's had some experience hunting, he suggests sealing it. Now, what sealing is these birds have two eyelids. And what they would do is they would sew the eyelids shut, the outer ones. And as the bird calmed down and became used to your presence, they're calm already when they can't see. I don't know why they didn't just stick a hood on them. They had hoods, but they sealed them. And what they would do is very gradually take the stitches out over a period of a week or two until the bird was accustomed to people. And what they would do then is heavily man the bird. And that what you do is you take your bird everywhere, and that's what they did. They would take the bird to church. They would take the bird to court. They would take the birds everywhere. You walking down the street, you had your bird. There's actually a declaration from, and I don't know the specific pope, talking about the nuns were spending too much time with their falcons in church, and they needed to not bring them to church. So you really do take them everywhere. I certainly do. When I am training a young bird, my birds go everywhere. My birds are bomb-proof. I take Simon to Starbucks. We sit out on the porch. So you man your bird, and that is kind of the process. There was also a process called waking the bird, where it's kind of like those cults where they don't let you sleep. That's kind of what they do with the bird. You keep it in a lit room for a couple days. I don't recommend these for modern falconry, other than just a lot of manning, but it's what they did. And at this point, are there any questions that I can answer?
don't see any yet, but if you have any questions, go ahead and type them down in the chat. I was just thinking, you must get a lot of attention when you take them to Starbucks.
I do. It's kind of funny. About half the people don't notice them. And because I just have them sitting on the back of a chair. And then the other half, you get like people wanting to take pictures, people wanting to, everything. It's interesting. Yes, in the MIDI, I see it. I see the question.
Okay.
We did Muse. Muse is more of a building rather than a cage. You really, they had kind of large boxes for transport. You would either keep the bird tethered, or you would keep it in a mew. And they had huge mews. And Frederick talks about how you should position your mew and where you would put it, and the type of land you would want. You would want it fairly clear, because he suggests doing what's called hacking. Not all of it, there are falconers who still do hack, and what that is you kind of let them go during the day and they soar and they come back to the mew at night. That's one of the ways to get imprints to be less screamy. Then absolutely you would hack your bird out of the mew, or you would just keep it in the mew, and you would keep it tethered. If you notice Simon, you can't see him because he's off screen, but he doesn't move a lot. He sits there and, he's tethered and he knows he's tethered, but they just don't move. If you see a bird in the wild, you'll see a hawk sitting on top of a telephone pole for about 10 hours. And that's kind of what they do. Let's see.
So it's I have some pictures of suspenders, square hula hoop to have birds carried to. Do you know the name of it? That would be a cadge, wouldn't it?
Probably a cadge. I'd have to see the picture, but probably a cadge to transport. There's also kind of these round perches that you'll just tether them to. You have to weather a bird. Meaning that you put them outside in the elements. Because if they stay in the mew the whole time, or if they stay in your house all the time, or if they stay wherever, they need to be accustomed to rain, they need to be accustomed to the weather. Because if you take a bird that's been inside where it's even 20 degrees warmer, it's not like here where they had heat, but where the temperature could throw them into shock, or they burn too many calories. Falconry is a fine dietary balance. Like right now, Simon's molting. He's fat. I'm not worried about his weight. But what you do is you feed them enough so when after their food's digested, they're hungry again. And it's not starving, because if they're starving, they don't have the energy to hunt. But if they're too fat, like right now, I could let him go. I could take him off my glove and he'd just sit there because he's not hungry. Wild animals don't expend energy. These birds just don't do that. And so if they're not hungry, they're not going to hunt. Or they're going to, on a beautiful day like today, he may shoot straight up in the sky and soar, which if a good wind comes up, he could be blown 10 miles out of the way. I'm wondering if I'm thinking about that thing. I'm wondering if you're talking like a bow perch or maybe a cadge. Again, I'd have to see that picture. One of the, there's a lot of phrases that were used then and still used today, called, or words that we have in our vocabulary that they used then that are from falconry. The phrase "fed up" is a falconry phrase. I'm fed up, meaning I'm done. If your bird is fed up, he's not going to hunt. He's not going to do anything. That is where that comes from. You hear, he waited with bated breath. when the birds try to fly and they're tethered, that's called baiting. And that's the anticipation but not going anywhere. That's kind of bated breath. There's a bunch of others.
So they sent a link. I'm
Okay.
gonna show it to. I'm gonna share it.
Let's see it.
Just on the screen. I'm pretty sure it's a cadge. Let's see. I know nothing about falconry. Basically, what I know, I learned on Worst Jobs in History. So I don't know if you've seen that episode.
I have not.
Fascinating. I'll send you a link to it. So.
That's a cadge. That is a cadge. It's kind of cool. That's a little bit later, but let's see. He's got a goshawk on there. He's got a gerfalcon. He's got a merlin. He's got a sparrowhawk. Can't tell what that other one is back there. But yeah, that's a cadge. The guy who carried it was called a cadger, and that's usually the oldest, most experienced falconer in the hunting party. That's where we get the word codger, kind of the old guy that knows everything, and that's where that comes from. That's a falconry term. So, okay, you've caught your bird, and so what are you gonna? You've sealed it, or you've woken it, and you're manning it. So what do you feed it? Falcons, specifically falcons, eat birds. That's their prey. That's their natural prey. And you might raise chickens. You might feed it chicks. You might feed it pigeons or doves. Frederick suggests, strangely, scrambled eggs and little bits of cheese, like cottage cheese. I don't suggest that. Don't do that. But what I do find interesting is he says, the flesh of mice is rarely fed to falcons, but is good when mixed with other meat as it furnishes both food and medicine. I don't know about medicine, but my guess is they fed a lot of clean flesh, which you don't necessarily want to do. You want to get some bone in there. You want some organ meat because in the wild, they eat the whole thing. So my guess is with all those little mouse organs, probably pretty good for it on occasion. Do I feed him mice? I have, mostly because they thaw fast and I'm lazy. But if I don't have a quail fod for him, I've thrown him a mouse on occasion. He eats it and he's fine. What I do find interesting is what Frederick says is you would never feed fish, as birds fed upon fish have soft flesh and feathers as well as poor humors. I love that line. I love that when you're reading Frederick's book, he talks about the humors of the birds a lot. And as I had said earlier, in birds, the females are larger than the males. If you ask Frederick, he will say because the humors of the females run hotter and drier, which I think is just really cool. So you would go out, you've got your bird fed. How would you tell your bird is too fat or too thin? They didn't have quite this, I've got an electronic gram scale that works fantastic, but they didn't have that then. What you would do is you would feel your bird's keel. And that's this right here, and he's gonna bite me. Yeah, that does show. And you can tell if that's really sharp, and you just know your bird. Like I'm holding him now, and I can tell he's heavy, and I can tell when he's light, and I can tell when he's ready to do his thing. If you're working with a gossip, there he is. Now he's on camera. Good boy. They've got a certain attitude that you just know. In goshawks, it's called yarak. So you figured out your weight, or you learn your bird enough to know when it's going to hunt and how it's going to hunt. So how do you train it? You know, you start out getting it to come to you. You whistle, it comes. You have food on your fist, it comes. Whistle, bird comes. You start using the lure. You put meat on that lure, and you swing it, and the bird learns that lure means food. Operant conditioning works. They know. They see that, they'll go right towards it. I use a different lure with him than I have here, or else he would be screaming and trying to get to it. And eventually, after you work on those recalls and you're on creance, that's where you use that creance. Eventually, you hold your breath and you let them go. How long does that take? Sometimes as little as a week. I mean, it's a fast process. Once they figure out that you're feeding them and don't want to kill them, they tame up pretty well. You know, they learn, and this is their advantage. Every time you let your bird go, it can leave and never come back. But what they learn is with you, they become a more efficient hunter, okay? So what you're doing is you take this bird and in the wild, he probably would not go after large pigeons. He'd probably stick with starlings and things that are smaller. What you do is you give them what's called a bagged prey, a bagged hunt. You clip the wings off a pigeon or tether it and let them kill it. And they learn, oh, hey, I do have this in my tool set. I can kill a pigeon. With gerfalcons, that's the largest of the falcons, a female gerfalcon. You figure Simon weighs about 400 grams. He's probably a little bit heavier right now. He's probably about 420 because he's fat and molting. A female gerfalcon could weigh 1,300 grams. That's a big bird. But what they would do is they would hunt swans and cranes with these birds. And what they would do is they would give them a bird with a broken wing. I mean, they didn't have, they wouldn't have reservations about breaking the wing on a bird to train their gerfalcon. And so that's what you'll do is you'll introduce this bird. It's called entering them into game. And that's what you do is you train them to hunt what you want them to hunt. Excuse me. So you go out, you've got your bird, you've done some bagged hunts. You may go to where you know it's an easy place to slip your bird. That's the act of letting them go, is the slip. And you may slip them on pigeons that you know are easy to get or whatever. And you have your successful hunts. The birds know, they're not stupid. They know that you're showing them game. It's usually not super hard for them. And that's advantageous. They understand that. Where was I going with that? But anyway, as I said, it's not fetch. You have to go, you dispatch the prey. You would feed your bird a piece of the kill. It goes in your bag. Sometimes you can do 2, sometimes you can do 3 hunts in a day. And you've got your bird, and now it's time to dress up. And you go with your ladies or your fellow gentlemen, and you go out and hunt, and you've got yourself a sport. And that's pretty much the sport of falconry. Then, kind of for future reading or interest, I talked about the trade in gerfalcons from Scandinavia. This is a fantastic book, Icelandic Trade with Gerfalcons. It's dry. but it's really interesting. It talks about medieval time to current. Actually, this is kind of cool. It's a gerfalcon with a swan from 1300s China. Kind of cool. But I do recommend this book if you want something historical and kind of interesting. I do recommend Frederick's book if you can find it. Once we get back to things, if somebody wants me to bring it to an event, if you want to look at it, I can bring it to an event. It is available online in places. It's fascinating. The first volume is actually a natural history about all birds. I want to say there's, according to Frederick, there's two birds. There's land birds and seabirds, and that's it. Those are the two categories. But really just interesting in a scientific and where people were and what they were thinking then. The falconry, he talks a lot about gerfalcons. If you're anyone and want to have influence, gerfalcons, you want to talk about gerfalcons to fancy guys. I can't stress how important the gerfalcon was in falconry, particularly the white gerfalcon. They come in a variety of colors, well, white to black, white, gray, black. There's kind of a mixture of the two, of the white and the gray. But the price of a white female gerfalcon was the income a castle would bring in a year. So if you can kind of wrap your head around that amount, they were used as diplomacy. They were used to pay off ransoms. There was I believe a prince that was captured, and they offered, I think, 900,000 gold ducats or something. And the captor wrote back and said, I want 10 white gerfalcons. So I don't know if they ever got it. But that's where the money was. That's the status. That was your status symbol. Part of hunting, one thing you would hunt with these guys is you would hunt with dogs. You know, what would you hunt with? If you read Frederick, he'll talk about small dogs from Spain. Now, what a small dog from Spain is, that's a spaniel. The word spaniel comes from Spain. In almost every writing about falconry, they do talk about spaniels being the best dog to hunt with and the worst dog to live with, which I find it amusing. I just do. You hunt with greyhounds, but you do not hunt with falcons with greyhounds. You know, the Middle Eastern peoples would hunt with Salukis and falcons. Generally, you don't want to hunt with fast dogs and falcons because they get to the prey at the same time. And that results in either an injured dog or an injured bird or both. Spaniels, pointers, harriers, things like that, slower dogs tend to do well. You know, nowadays we'll use dachshunds if you're hunting rabbits, if you're hunting birds, any of the pointers, setters. There's a lot of crossbreeds. The small Mustalander was originally a falconry dog. They're just kind of reintroducing them. Kind of interesting. But are there any more questions? We got anything? I don't see anything.
I'm not seeing any questions. I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess that just about covers it, unless anybody has any questions. Yeah, there's in the documents, there's a timeline of falconry. There's a list of falconry terms. I could not find my Shakespearean terms in falconry. I touched a little bit on it, but I couldn't find my document. Then there's the pictures of the examples. There's some artwork. There's a Roman tile of falconry. Oh, what do we got? Awesome. So yeah, I think if anybody has any questions afterwards, please feel free to PM me on Facebook. I'm easy to find. I'm in charge of the On Tier Hunt Guild. You can reach me through there. You can look up Runa Haraldsdottir. I don't know if I have it as Runa or Dagrun. I don't remember. Stephanie McLeod, I'm easy to find. Simon's picture is on my profile. It's easy to find.
Simon's picture is a lot of places.
Yeah, Simon is a lot of places, yes. But yeah, so, oh, good. So yeah, if nobody has any questions, thanks a lot for showing up. I appreciate it. Oh, now he's gonna be in the camera, of course. Sure.